So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:08. Can I get someone to make a motion to approve the agenda, please? Jacob? Thank you, Jacob. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, all of those in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 I see two people.
Robin's
Robin
hand.
said
Okay.
he's driving.
He's sitting in his car watching a hockey game.
Oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, great. Perfect. All right. All of those opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. Communications with parents, citizens, and staff. Is there anybody online that would like to speak to us? I don't think so. Okay, moving on. Consent agenda. Can I get someone to make a motion to approve?
No.
Okay, so Jess, looks like Jess is approving and Jacob is seconding. Okay. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Do you approve the consent agenda, Becky's cat? She can't hear me yet. Becky, can you hear me? You approve the consent agenda? Okay, thanks. All right. All those who don't want to approve the consent agenda? I'm not seeing anyone. Okay, consent agenda passes. Communications and support to the board. Superintendent report.
Not really anything for this board that won't go to OBU and BUU. Sale of Route 7 property was reported to the Otter Valley Board last week. Including in your packet is a link to ESSER, which are COVID recovery grants, and some other commonly occurring entitlement grants, IDEA and B as well. Modular update last week, OBU did approve moving forward for a new modular on the Otter Valley Union Middle and High School campus, at least to start the investigation. So Brenda Fleming and Michael are working on that. Both modulars are in place at OCA and Neshabie, waiting on the final electricity, plumbing, the whole 9 yards. But after the first of the year, they should be good to go.
So they're not being used yet, not even the Lester one. Okay.
We updated on the PEBT, which is pandemic EBT funds. All of our schools will qualify. So if students receive EBT, they are entitled to additional funds. Brenda and schools will support families in understanding that. LinkedIn, every 6 to 8 weeks, we have a new Rutland Herald page. RNESU schools are featured in those. A pretty exciting addition to the Rutland Herald we're happy to see. And then the superintendent series is always linked in there every 2 weeks. Upcoming next week will be Otter Valley. And that's it.
Thank you. All right, executive limitations monitoring reports. The first one we have is monitoring report 2.5, emergency superintendent succession. So that should be in your packet. If someone would like to make a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Becky. And a second. Oh, Jacob, thank you. Okay. Discussion regarding monitoring report 2.5.
I thought this was good. I know last time when we looked at it, it was kind of in the light of COVID, and even though COVID is still around, it's interesting to read it with fresh eyes.
Especially now that we have a new superintendent, so. What is your succession plan?
My succession plan is Marcia, Brenda, Tyler. Yes.
Other discussion? Not seeing anyone. Okay, not hearing anything. All of those in favor of approving executive limitation 2.5, succession to the superintendent, please signify by saying aye. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, 2.5 passes. Next one is another monitoring report. Once again, which is 2.7, compensation and benefits. It's page 17 of your packet. Can I get someone to make a motion to approve or accept, actually? Probably should use the word accept. 2.7.
So moved.
Thanks, Becky. Is there a second? Jacob, thank you. Okay. Any comments, questions?
I'll just say the same thing that Jacob said, which is this is really well written, very clear.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor of 2.7, compensation and benefits, please signify by saying aye. Okay, all those opposed? Perfect. Thank you. The next thing in our policy, oops, because I just went flying by it. The next thing on our agenda is our own monitoring report 3.4, which is monitoring superintendent performance. What's in your packet, starting on page 20, is the one that we filled out yesterday. This is the one we filled out yesterday. Last year. And so the question is looking at it, does this still ring true to you? Does the interpretation still make sense? Should we broaden it? Are our examples good?
Sorry.
No,
Is that
no,
me?
that was just me shutting the front door.
Oh, okay. I know, I was like, who just slammed the door? Anyone want to make a motion to approve our own monitoring report and then we can discuss it?
So moved.
Thanks, Becky. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jessica. All right. Anything that we need to change or think about adding?
The only thing that I thought about, close reading this is, the first point one, about monitoring is simply to determine the degree to which board policies are being met. And I don't know if, when I thought about it, I thought, that's mostly true, but maybe it's too narrow. I mean, don't we also do monitoring to see whether, like, the scope of our ends are being met, or whether we need more policies, whether we're not being specific enough? But I think it's good and vague, which is good. I'm not proposing a change, but that's what it made me think.
Okay. Anybody have any comment to that?
I agree with Jacob. Sorry, I had to run and let some cat out.
That's all right. We kept seeing its tail there on your camera.
A beautiful tail, by the way.
Okay, so I think I can see what your point is, Jacob. And I think what it boils down to is that we don't want to put anything on here as monitoring information that isn't part of what we're supposed to be monitoring. So, but I don't think we need to change anything. How does everybody else feel about that? Okay. Anything else that we need to be looking at or thinking about changing? Okay, I'm so glad we're all so talkative. So based on that, if you're okay with what we have there, all of those that approve 3.4 3.4, monitor, is it 3.4? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Monitoring of the superintendent, please signify by saying aye. Okay, those opposed? Okay. We've approved that one. Alright, let me get back to the agenda here. Alright. So the next piece of the puzzle is budget review and approval, and Brenda just graciously walked in.
Literally off the presses. So, did you already do the assessment policy?
No,
Okay.
policies are after that.
Okay, that's fine. So, I'm assuming in this presentation that you adopt that. If you
Okay.
choose not to, then everything I tell you right now, I'd have to adjust. But, you know, that's your call. I can live with that. I want to tell you a little bit about what has changed and what we know that we didn't know a month ago.
Okay.
So we have our first preliminary pupils, equalized pupils, and as you know, I monitor that pretty closely. And we are seeing a decline, but it doesn't surprise me. So we know that, for example, at Otter Valley, we know we lost 36 students from this year to last year, and Otter Valley is seeing a decline in their equalized pupils. Wow, why will it not open this report?
You want me to put anything up?
No, I don't know why Dan did things with my computer today, and now it's mad at me. I don't know why it's like being so persnickety.
Can I ask you what the term equalized pupils mean?
Yes, that is a really good question. Thank you for asking. So equalized pupil is an equation of students that takes into a fact that it costs more money to educate a high school student and it costs less money to educate a preschool student who comes to school 10 hours a week. So it has weights that are assigned to various different types of pupils by level. So for example, a pre-K is defined as 46%, a K through 6 is 100%, and a 7 through 12 is 113%. In addition to that, there is also weights added for schools that have high poverty, based usually on SNAP or food stamps, and also for students, schools with high ELL, English as a, ELL, English language learners, formerly English as a second language. So there's additional weights added for that. And then it's equalized throughout the state because they don't want to pay for more students than they have. And when you bump up all of the high school students to 113%, you end up equalizing it back down. So all that says is this is the denominator to determine our tax rate. And so it becomes really important because it has a direct impact on our taxes. If we go down in equalized pupils, our tax rates go up and vice versa. So Otter Valley is going down in the preliminary count by 13 students. Makes a lot of sense to me, which is about 4%. I'm sorry, that's Barstow. That one actually doesn't make as much sense to me. Otter Valley is going down by 21 or 1.6%. So I'll be looking into Barstow's a little bit more. Otter Valley seems pretty reasonable to me. So this is the first version. The state is hopeful that they will actually, for the first time in 4 years, meet the statutory deadline of finalizing equalized pupils by December 15th, which I believe is tomorrow. I'm not sure if they'll finalize it by tomorrow, but they will have, they've become a lot closer than they have over the last 4 years. If it changes, I would not expect it to change drastically. And so what does it really mean to Rutland Northeast? It's how we cut up the pie. So the costs of Rutland Northeast are shared based on equalized pupils according to our assessment policy, and according to the assessment policy that we're proposing changing It's really just language changing, not process changing. So how do you cut the pie, basically? And does the shift change much? And so it did not change much between the two different schools, and I don't expect it to drastically change between now and, according to policy, because the state has historically, for the last 4 years anyways, been behind in finalizing the equalized pupils on time. We said we'll use the version that exists at the last day of the calendar year. So this may be it, or it may change a little bit between now and then. So with equalized pupils, I can start to give the first assumption on assessments. A couple of other things that changed is we had a student move in. And we had one of our extraordinary 504 students become eligible for eligible under IDEA-B or eligible for IEP services. So they kind of shift from one column into the next. So those changes are also incorporated in the slideshow that will you, Vanna, for me? That Kristen will present. I basically went to the old one and kind of updated it. And then the last thing that changed and had really almost no significance at all, so I was so happy to have spent 3 hours today doing it, was the settlement of the para and the teacher contract. So just so you know, the para driver contract, sorry, not the para teacher. So our change budget to budget from the last budget to this one is an increase of $68,130. $50,000 is that new student coming in. The column shift doesn't change our budget, changes how our pie is cut, but it doesn't change our budget. And the salaries and benefits are actually $9,680 higher than they were in November. And then one other change I made was I did increase our audit fees by 10%. Just, I don't know how I missed it in the first go around.
So what does that do to the total?
So, yeah, so actually, can you, do the slides? So I'm just, not that one.
That's the only one I have.
Well, that stinks. Let me,
Oh, nope, I just got it.
okay, good.
Sorry.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Wait, they don't see my screen. Hold on.
So I'm going to flip through the slides that you have heard before and before and before, but I leave them in there because, I don't know, it's easier to flip through them than to take them out. Just to remind you that all of these things, this slide did not change, that slide did not change. Those are just information on our federal grants, specifically our COVID funds. So here we are. The increase is now. Ooh.
Sorry.
So the increase is now 11.34%, or $68,000 higher than it was last month. And so the assessments are up by 12.08%. But remember that this is where that cost shift happens. So when we spoke in November, if you can read the little subscript on the bottom, the amount of cost that we shifted from the local budgets into central office was $356,000. That's dropped down a little bit because of that student who was found to be eligible and should be in the SPED column, if you will. So that cost shift that last time was 3.58, I believe, is now 2.39. So the assessment would change by 9.69% without bringing on that cost shift. Just as a point of reference, last year's assessment was 9.45. I updated this to just kind of follow through on that new student who came in, the money for salaries and benefits, and the only benefit that changed were the benefits that piggyback salary, FICA, workers' comp, and retirement for people who qualify. And then this is really just, okay, so so remember that there's a budget increase and an assessment increase. And the reason why the two will be different is because revenues from other sources are going to be less. So the difference between our budget increase of 11.34 and the assessment increase of 12, whatever it was, 1208, thank you, is we have less indirect rate revenue coming in because our indirect rate approved by the Agency of Education has gone down. And next year we'll have even more or a bigger loss in indirect revenue rates because we get some money for the ESSER funds and those will be gone. So just kind of, this is again like, all right, so tell me where we spend the money. There's really no changes programmatically from our conversations last month. If you go back one slide, Kristen. So you just kind of look sort of departmental, the general fund, that's curriculum, instruction and assessment, superintendent, business office, technology. So that's about 3% of the 11. Triple E is just over 0.5%. Special education is under 6%, 5.7. Transportation, getting our little friends to and from school, just under 2. And then Idea B and Idea B pre-K are always almost flat. And then kind of when you look at it from departments, so that direct instruction, that's the 183,000. That's for the actual placement costs of our 504 extraordinary students. The transportation down on the bottom of 1.96 is higher than the one you saw before because included in that is transportation to get those students, those 504 students, to their placements. No, that's fine. And then lastly, and again, this is just to remind you of where we're spending our funds. So if you were to add the salaries, the benefits, and the purchase services all together, because the reason why we went down in purchase services is we traded a purchase service in for a salary. So if you add those 3 lines all together, you'll see that 7.5% of that 11.3 is all in people. That's people across all categories of our organization. So that's special education, teachers, paraeducators, bus drivers, central office staff, the custodian for this building. And then the other big one that you see there is supplies, including fuel. It is also including our one-to-one initiative. And so just to remind you, in 2020, when the world changed and we pivoted and made sure that students had devices because of COVID-19, this is the first year that those devices are now coming up for cycle replacements. I don't know if you want me to go through all of this or not, or just to kind of remind you. So there's essentially no changes in the curriculum department except changing to an assistant superintendent, but they have 2 staff. Technology is, again, no changes, but we do have increases for that one-to-one initiative. The boards, no changes unless you said did they do their salaries yet? No, okay. The one change in boards is not from last month to this month, but I was optimistic when we built the budget the first time and I took out any cost for negotiations. So I'm happy to say next year will be the first year we have no negotiations in a very long time. So that reduced $28,000 from the boards department because you won't be paying those negotiation fees. Superintendent's office, no proposed changes. The business office does have a proposed change to add an assistant business manager or a financial analyst and to eliminate some of these shared positions that we have, just to clean those up. And special education, also part of eliminating the shared positions, is adding an executive assistant. but all of the other programs are defined by student needs. Yeah, so yeah, if you go back one more. So this is just an FYI. These purchase services actually land in Barstow and Otter Valley's budget. I just wanted to remind you that we manage them here. And the reason why we always manage them here is it allows us to keep employees as 100% instead of part in one and part in another, which is hard to keep employee loyalty when they can't feel confident that they have a 100% job. So that's the reason why we share those. And we talked about preschool programs and decided we're going to look into this for the fiscal year 25 budget cycle. Look at it thoughtfully, kind of outside of the budget instead of in reaction to the budget. So there's no proposed changes in preschool programs. We do have in the budget the continuation of the lottery, and we do have the continuation of our pre-K region, which is defined as the 8 towns that make up RNESU. And then the next policy is just, this is from last time, just to kind of remind you that we have shared an updated policy for first reading. And I think I did it correctly with the reds and the blacks and the strikeouts. But the biggest reason why we're doing this is our policy defines how we cut the pie, how we share between Barstow and Otter Valley, and it defined special education costs as eligible for reimbursement under the Vermont Agency of Education funding formula, and that was eliminated and replaced. And I don't want to say it's a one-for-one elimination and a replacement with Act 173, because Act 173 covers a lot of other things in addition to that, but it basically changed the definition of, changed from a reimbursement model where we had to tie cost directly associated with IEP services to a census-based block grant. That gives us broader flexibility and more options on how to service students, with a requirement that first we have to meet IEP needs. So that's the changes necessary in the policy. And just to remind you again, I have included in those assessment numbers what I think are fairly close to the shifts between Barstow and Otter Valley based on the equalized pupil version 1.
Is there questions for Brenda? Is that your hand up, Marcia? Sure looks like it. Okay.
Oh, that's mine. Sorry.
Oh,
That was my cursor over you, Marcia. It looked like you were raising your hand. My bad.
How quickly we thought Marcia wanted to add.
That's Charlene's fault.
So we're looking at going from the original one said a 10.71% increase. Now we're looking at 11.34. And then assessment wise, so when you did the assessments for Barstow and OVU, you originally, you thought the assessment would come into Otter Valley at so that Otter Valley's total increase for the year would be 5.91. So this doesn't necessarily, it's not a drastic change, or it is?
It's not a drastic change. However, the numbers are high, right? So I put in a placeholder of was it 10.51 or 10.71?
10.71, yeah.
Whatever, 10.71. So I put that in. And now.
You said it was 1208.
Yes.
Okay.
So, can you actually go back to that slide by any chance, Kristen?
I was just curious as to how, obviously this
Which
impacts
slide?
our individual
going back.
budgets.
I'll scream when you should stop. There. Okay, so that's how they shift out. I actually thought I printed these pages. I mean, literally, they're probably sitting on my desk, hot off the presses.
So, all right. So, and 1% you said was $107,000.
107.
Okay. So, I know we've talked in the past. I don't know that we want to make any changes, and I'm just being devil's advocate at this point because we do have to approve this budget tonight in order to have it ready for Barstow and Otter Valley's budgets next month or even next week. I'm curious about, we had talked at one point about, you have 3 buses built into this,
Yeah.
into this budget. There is a possibility of saying we only want 2 buses, maybe. And I know a bus is roughly 80 grand.
Yes, but we don't put 80 grand into the budget because
Okay.
we finance it.
So it's only the leases part.
It's only the lease part.
Okay.
I can pull up what that is. If, now would be the year to think about that because we have been very consistent in replacing 3 a year.
Okay.
And we have 31 buses. So we're in a good place. Now might be the year to think about that. That would, it would reduce it by 16,000.
Which is not a big deal.
So bring that 68 down to, just a little smidgen over the new student that came in. If we closed our borders for a month, we would have had another savings.
Well, we can't.
We're not going to do that.
We're not going to say no to a student. What are your thoughts, board members?
I guess I don't know where to cut things, and, the number seems high, and yet, we need the things that are there, so how do we sell it, I guess?
Are we still in negotiations with a new food service vendor?
We have to go out to bid, so we will start that process in January.
Okay.
There's no cost associated with the program, though.
No, I know, but I was just curious if, okay. Okay. Marcia, you always have great things to say. What are you thinking?
Well, for special ed, you can see it's a moment in time, which I've been telling you for 22 years. We presented a budget. Within a month, it's already different because we had a student that moved in that is high cost, and that's the way it goes. And I could tell you that in 3 months, you could have 5 move out, but you could have 10 move in, or you could have 20, special ed is such a moment in time. I can tell you that, I continue to always budgetarily look at special ed. I think I do a very good job fluidly with the budget, but we also have students whose needs are more intense, and we have students who, we're seeing changes in our society, we're seeing changes in our culture, and we're seeing changes in the needs of our students. COVID certainly changed how we see children enter our schools, and for 3 years, some students weren't in school, and that could have been a 3-year-old that's now 6. That could have been a 7th grader. It's now in 9th grade. We missed middle school. And so we're just challenged with supports that are appropriate and needed. So you see a 5% raise. Special ed has not had that raise for years. I've really kept that budget quite, steady. You all know that. You have worked with me. Well, we have needs that have to be met. So I can't lower that 5%. Every year for 21 years, I've come with you for a plan to reduce the budget. I have no plan to reduce it because it's about services for children who have those needs. So I'm sorry, Lori, what I would say is I think that's how we have to sell the budget. That's the issue. We have increased needs, the whole country does.
Yeah. No.
I think the other thing that's hard with the Rutland Northeast budget, and specifically special education, is all of us actually, is it's labor heavy. There's very little to offset it, you know, where a school has a facility and all sorts of other things. Not that it makes it any easier, but we are labor intensive, and we're trying to maintain and attract staff by being competitive. And so, you know, our negotiated contracts have recognized that and represent that in these budgets.
What I can tell you is we weren't fully staffed last year. This year we're fully staffed. So again, when you're fully staffed, the expense is there. I don't have vacancies. We're looking quite good. Last year we had to go with some vacancies. So I'm checking references on someone right now. We actually have applicants. So we have a little higher budget because we're meeting all of our vacancies, whereas last year we didn't. And I had to do some creative meeting of need. So you're seeing a real budget fully staffed.
And is this the first year that we've been dealing with Act 173 and the fact that we're only getting a, you know, it's not the reimbursement model anymore, it's just a block grant?
Second year.
Second
Yeah.
year? Okay.
Second year.
And next year, the regs will change to follow. The special ed regulations, they stopped for a year, but they actually will go in place next year. And that'll be interesting to see the new regulation change and if that raises the amount of special ed students in our district or not, because the regs are being open to be a little more flexible.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm inclined to approve this budget tonight. I just, you know, want to be able to sell it to both of our individual boards and then sell it to our public, because the one thing I know I don't want to do, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the board doesn't want to do, is cut anything that would affect our students' educations. And so at this point, I would be willing to entertain a motion to approve the budget at whatever number you have there. Because we're approving the number, right?
You approved the bottom line number, yes.
Right.
Would
And
you
what
like me
number
to
is
read
that?
it? Yes. $11,951,036.
Is there a motion out there for that?
Can you throw that at Charlene?
So moved.
Thank you, Becky. Is there a second?
I second.
Thanks, Robin. Okay, all those in favor of the budget as shown to us by Brenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Jess? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Then it's unanimous. Thank you for that.
You all.
May I just make one other comment because of Becky's comment about selling it? The executive assistant in special ed is a person that already exists. It's a title changed and a little more responsibility, but that's not a new position. So I just think it's important that people understand that. That's Beth Ripley. Beth Ripley is a full-time employee in special services. So she's getting more responsibility and a little added title. That is not a new position.
Okay. No, that's awesome to go. Thank you. And we do know how good she is for us, so thank you. All right, so our next piece of the puzzle is confirming the board budget, which I think we just did, and our honorariums. So what you have is this was in our packet, right?
Went out as an addendum today.
Okay, so an addendum this morning that came out was the board compensation comparables, which shows all of the local districts around us, what our board members get, and then what our district moderator, who is Bill Moore, our district clerk, who is Charlene, and our district treasurer, who is Bill Dick.
Otter Valleys, you don't have one for Rutland, right?
Oh, we don't? Oh, well, lovely. Okay.
Well, it's me.
All right, there we go. So you'll see that based on this, we're kind of on the low end, actually. So RNESU board members get $600 as an honorarium. Local people around us, ACSD is $500, although they're proposing $1,200 for next year. Addison Northwest is at 850. Mount Abe is at 1200. Mill River's at 1000, and Slate Valley is at 1200. And then their chair also looks like everybody's chair gets a additional stipend. We do that here. We did 50% of the honorarium, so the chair in RNESU gets 900. And everywhere except ACSD, they have an additional amount for the chair, which seems fair. Looking at this, I don't think I want to make any changes, but that's up to you guys. What do you think?
I think it's good work. I'm curious what we budget ourselves for, like professional development or trainings.
Sure. Brenda can look
Is
at
it the document made me think of how much we give ourselves for that?
I'm gonna look it up, but I think we have $10,000 for that.
Other questions while Brenda's looking that up? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
Yes, we have $10,000 for in the budget for board professional development,
Just for RNESU.
just for RNESU.
Okay. All right, which we have used in the past for our policy governance and anything else.
Policy governance.
What was the
Maybe
policy?
VSBA, when you go to the VSBA training in the fall.
Oh, okay, yep. Okay, did that answer your question, Jake? Good. Okay. So, is there any kind of motion to, regarding our honorarium for RNESU? If not, we'll move on. Okay, I'm not hearing one, so we're gonna keep our compensation where it is. Thank you. All right, continued discussion, future of pre-K. You kind of touched on it earlier, Brenda, but do you want to continue that? Or was that just a discussion
I
regarding?
think just to be thoughtful, it really requires another year.
Okay,
Or this calendar year to be planful.
okay. Any questions for Brenda or Kristen at this point? Okay, well, we're waiting with bated breath as to your thoughts and comments about that.
Oh, yes.
All right, board report for annual district reports. Oh, that's me. Can I borrow someone's pen? So, every year for the annual
Sorry,
report,
Lori.
I write, the board chair writes a letter to our constituents, telling them what's been going on in the district, what we've been working on. So I always come to you at this time and say, hey board, what did we do this last year that I should tell everybody about? Oh, we did a lot. Okay.
I think we talked about how we have a new superintendent.
Okay, yes, I think that's a great idea. What else?
I think you should talk about managing $10 million in ESSER funds and COVID-related funds over the last couple of years.
Okay.
You could mention that Sudbury's being utilized if you wanted to. I don't know if you want to, but certainly that's been a successful site for the students there.
Awesome. That's great. Is it still just 4 students, Marcia, at this point? Yes?
Yes, it's four very high need students, yes, and
Okay.
they're doing very well there.
Awesome.
Successful negotiations.
That's true. I always talk about the budget a little bit. Anything I think, based on the budget, the successful negotiations is part of that. I always like to talk about the fact that we are not cutting programs. Anything else?
Could reiterate the commitment to the one-to-one initiative that's included into the budget.
You're talking about devices, right?
Yes.
1-to-1. Okay.
And of course, maintaining your fleet by continued replacement.
And ask for drivers, right?
Oh, yes.
We need to ask for bus drivers.
And I think prioritization of student supports. I mean, really, student needs drives the budget.
Yep.
Yeah, I think everything that Marcia has just said about what they've done this past year is great.
Okay.
You know, as far as, you know, for student support and the different changes that have occurred.
Great.
Marcia can go on a road show. Just
I know. Yeah, we'll just parade you around. How's that?
She needs a driver.
Careful what you suggest, because I would do that, so.
I
you
need
know,
a
you gotta be
driver.
careful.
I know.
You don't want me
Brenda
to drive
seems
her?
like the smart choice.
No, we don't want Brenda to drive. If anybody's ever heard of Brenda, not a good idea. Wow.
Unless you need a facelift.
That's true. If you need a facelift, that is the perfect person to ride with. So, okay. Well, that's a lot to write. So I'll take care of that. Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, moving on. So ESSER 3 funds for the Otter Valley Middle School High School Modular Unit. So last week at the Otter Valley Board meeting, they approved to use ESSER funds up to $450, right? This says $375. So
Yes.
we approved ESSER funds to put a new modular unit at Otter Valley Middle School for additional classrooms. Estimated cost was $450,000. So the agenda is incorrect at the $375. So at this point, the reason it has come back to Rutland Northeast is because Rutland Northeast actually has control of the ESSER funds. So now we, as the RNESU board, need to decide whether or not we want to confirm that use of ESSER funds for a modular unit at the middle school. So at this point, I would entertain a motion in order to discuss this. Jacob?
So moved.
Okay. So Jacob, you're making a motion to approve the ESSER funds to be used for $450,000, up to $450,000 for a modular unit at the high school.
Correct.
Okay? Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Robin. Discussion. So what we heard last week, because I'll just, for the Barstow board Barstow board members that were not there at the meeting last week, we have at least 2 teachers who are on carts, meaning that they don't have their own, classroom, so they essentially wheel their stuff around to a free classroom in order to hold class. We also have Laura O'Brien, what is her title?
work-based learning.
Work-based learning, thank you. Our work-based learning unit would be great out in the modular unit, just because the students that work within that may not feel comfortable coming into the school. And therefore they could check in the modular unit and then go out to wherever their work-based learning might be. And so at this point, Michael Ruppel, the principal, has suggested that it would fit very nicely in the little crevice space out back behind the school in front of Markowski's field, but in the little cul-de-sac where the 8th grade classrooms are currently. I'm not sure the fire marshal will approve that, but it's a thought anyway. So, and he wants up to 70 feet. Is that what it was? Or 50, you're gonna
We're gonna bid for 2,
bid for 2? Okay.
maybe 3, to kind of do
Different sizes?
the best design and
Okay.
the sizes, but up to 76.
Up to
feet,
76.
in length and 52 in width.
Okay. And this would provide at least 2 classrooms.
3.
3 classrooms.
76 is 3.
3 classrooms. Okay.
And at least 1 bathroom, I think we're going to put 2 in because that's just a smart idea.
Okay.
And a couple of office spaces.
Great. Great. So, questions?
I know I've asked this before when we've talked about them before, but when we think about these modular units, we haven't estimated we think they'll be up for X amount of years. I mean, how do they last? Are we hoping?
So it's a modular unit, and unlike so I don't know if you remember the old trailers that we used to have at Otter Valley many moons ago, many moons ago, that eventually started leaking and just essentially they fell apart, and then we decided to fix up the front and got rid of those, and we built on the 7th grade wing. Modular units, from what I can tell, at the one at Leicester that I was in, is almost like my house. So they're built very well. The only difference I think is that it doesn't have a kitchen, and the floor is that classroom type stuff. Other than that sucker looks pretty good. So I'm not sure how long they last. I think our goal is not to use them forever. But I think they would last a really, really long time, and I don't foresee them being the type of thing that is going to start disintegrating like a trailer might.
May I make a comment, because I'm not involved in this? I know Brenda's worked hard on it, I know Kristen's aware of it, but Jacob, I was pleasantly surprised because I was at Neshobe and I'm always in the schools, so I haven't really had a time to focus on those units. I saw the one at Neshobe, and I have to tell you, where it's placed and how it looks, I expected like I'm kind of a person, I thought, oh gosh, I bet you it's going. It looks quite fine. And it's not a bad building at all. And like Laura said, it looks like a double wide. It looks like a nice double wide home, except it doesn't look like a home. It looks more like a school. Or, not so homey, but it's a well-made double wide. It's really what I would call it. And so I was pleasantly surprised. I was also pleasantly surprised, and I'm praising Brenda and Kristen here because I had nothing to do with any of this. I'm pleasantly surprised with where it was placed. It looks quite good. And so I was like, oh God. So just to tell, I'm actually on a public meeting, aren't I? But it's a great thing and it looks great. And I was just thrilled this week. I went and looked at it. And I have to tell you, they're much better looking than I thought.
I have to agree. It does really look like a house on the outside. At least the one in Leicester does. And then you go in and you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely school. But I could see myself moving in. I just need a kitchen.
Cool. Thanks for that testimonial.
Just to add to that a little bit, just because you should know this, ESSER is federal funds, and federal funds actually require us to kind of do a cost-benefit analysis and see if, for what we are projecting, the length of time we need it versus whether we should lease it or buy it. In the first 2 trailers that we've purchased, or the modular units that we've purchased, that payback turnaround is around 4.5 years. And when we presented this to the Otter Valley boards, which it's their property, so they obviously want to have a say on what goes on their property, they were very clear, 5 years. Give us 5 years. It gives us time to come up with a thoughtful plan on what we need and how to go to the community and get that information. So we are purchasing versus leasing. I will go through that exercise again with this one, just to confirm that that hasn't changed. I don't have any reason to believe that it has changed.
Yep. Okay.
And they do have value at the end as well.
Sure.
And the timeline, I'm sorry, I didn't hear all the OB meeting, because when are we looking to have them purchased and cited and
So,
there?
so we are, we want to, if it's approved tonight, we will put it out to bid in January for delivery in June, probably June to July, so that we can be operational in August. So Rich and his team know that one of their priorities in the summer would be the site work that's necessary to install the unit. I had envisioned, you know, kind of they drop them and you put in a big blue electric cord and you start operating. It's not at all like that. Far more involved than I had envisioned, but that gives us the summer months. So it also gives us time to start lining up vendors, because that's been really challenging. The construction industry has been booming, and contractors haven't been available to do work either.
Other questions regarding the modular unit? Okay, hearing none. In that case, I'm assuming you're ready to vote. So all of those in favor of the motion to approve the use of ESSER 3 funds to purchase and install a modular unit for Otter Valley for additional classrooms on the Otter Valley main campus, as approved by the OV board, December 7th, 2022, estimated cost $450,000. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Robin, I can't.
His hands up.
Okay, sorry. Perfect. All right, thank you. Then it's unanimous. Moving on, RNESU policies for action. So most of these are second readings. The first one is policy JGCE, substitute teachers, which is a renewal. I don't believe there were any changes to it. So if I could get someone to make a motion to approve. No one wants to approve it? Oh, thanks, Jacob.
I'll make
Okay.
a motion.
Phew. So anyone want to make a second for that?
Jessica had her hand up once.
Second.
Thank you, Becky. Okay, any discussion regarding this? We have seen it once before. Again, there has been, it's just coming back up for renewal. So, any discussion? No? Okay. So all of those that approve policy GCE, substitute teachers, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. The next one also up for renewal is policy JGA, admission of expelled or suspended students. Again, no changes to it. It was just up for renewal. So if I could get someone to make a motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Jacob. Is there a second?
Aye.
Thank you, Robin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all of those that approve policy JGA, admission of expelled or suspended students, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, fully approved. All right, our next policy is policy JH, which is the Federal Child Nutrition Act Wellness Policy. It has been revised. Those of you that can see it, there's changes in red. So, and this is our first reading tonight. So, can I get someone to make a motion, please? Actually, our first reading was, yeah. Have we already had
Our
our first?
second reading.
This is our second reading. I apologize.
Second reading.
Thank you. So can someone make a motion to approve?
So
Oh,
moved.
thank you, Robin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, you can take your pick on that one.
Okay.
All right. Any discussion? Oh, Okay, hearing none, all of those that approve Federal Child Nutrition Act Wellness Policy, Policy JH, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those not wanting to approve? I think it was unanimous. Okay, moving on. Our next policy up for renewal, our second reading, is Policy KM, Distribution of Non-School Related Materials. I do not believe there were any changes to this. So, can I get someone to make a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Becky. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Robin. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All of those that approve the distribution of non-school related materials, policy KM, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And it's unanimous. Okay, next policy is policy BDDHA. Where do you come up with these?
I
Anyway.
don't.
It was a coding system that is as old as dirt.
All right. Public participation at school board meetings. Again, no changes. This is our second reading, and it is up for renewal. Anyone want to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks, Becky. Second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Jess. Any discussion? Okay. All of those that approve policy BDDHA, public participation at school board meetings, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, and it's unanimous. Thank you for that. All right, let's see. We then have policies for second reading approved to rescind is policy IGD, which is co-curricular activities, and it is to rescind it. And we did see this at our last meeting. So can I get someone to make a motion, please?
So moved.
Thanks, Becky. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. And the reason for rescinding this, just not necessary?
They're part of our program. That's just
Part of our
nice.
program. Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. All of those in favor of rescinding policy IGD, co-curricular activities, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, the next one. This is our first reading of policy DDA, apportionment of expenses, RNESU. This was, I think, something that Brenda was alluding to earlier. So, this is our first reading. There does look like there's some changes to it. Can I get someone to make a motion so that we can discuss?
So moved.
Thanks, Becky. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jess. So you were talking about that there were some major changes. Do you want to just quickly go through them?
Sure. I don't have it in front of me.
Oh,
The biggest reason or the major change, so the first section, central office, there's no change. And then the second section, special services, the reason why there are changes is because of the state definition changes and the fact that the state no longer has a reimbursement model. So we, in this policy, referenced that we would be using, we would be pooling and assessing cost that were eligible for that reimbursement. So we have to redefine what we're pooling so everybody can understand what kind of goes in that budget. And then there's some old language in here, some things that we have, a grant that doesn't even exist anymore, that are just grants, and grants come in and go out. They don't need to be specifically listed. So the first section is taking out those grants that are just an in and an out, that don't need to be listed, that are not related to special education but are part of special services. We're recommending removing them. And then adding this new definition for those 504 extraordinary students, and linking the cost of those extraordinary students to the state threshold. So as the state threshold changes, you don't have to amend this policy. We'll monitor that. And these are costs for students that, you know, even the business manager knows their name, right? So these are extraordinary students that, you know, Marcia's always involved in regarding their services as well as their team at the schools. And that's really kind of expanding clearly away from special education. If you think of special education as students that are eligible under the federal IDEA-B, Individuals with Disability Education Act, Part B, and now in our special service definition are those students and these students, these extraordinary 504 American with Disability student children. That's the first paragraph. The second is really just getting rid of the word and changing out the word education for services, linking it to the definition above, and getting rid of the definition about part of the state reimbursement definition. And then recognizing that in addition to the 504 students, we do need to capture and count and account for students that fall under the Individual Disability Education Act Part B, their maintenance of effort. And that's federal funds, and it requires that we never reduce our maintenance of effort. So in other words, we're not supplanting and using special education funds for something other than special education. Then if you kind of turn it over, we did make sure that we added the word for transportation services to include special education or special services. And remember, we talked about, for example, that transportation of those extraordinary 504 students. Sometimes they can ride on a regular bus that we have and they can go. Sometimes they are actually placed at schools that we place IEP students. They can just ride that bus. There's not an added cost or an added run. But there are times, and we do have an example now, where we have a student who we are transporting to Williston, and it's a single ride, single student, and this is a 504 student. So we want to make sure that it includes those special services transportation. And then the last one was just on food service. We've always had this in here. One of the things that we've never really said is only the amount. We've always had this here, and we've never had an assessment because food services has been self-balancing. It hasn't had a deficit. So we can't predict the future. And so this gives us that assurances that should the food service program expenses actually exceed their revenues, we would share it proportionately according to this policy. Again, that's never happened. I can't predict the future.
Thank you. Questions for Brenda or Kristen on this policy?
Oh, I think there's an effective date too.
Yeah, there is. It says July 1st, 2023 or fiscal year 2024.
Right.
Or until amended.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone have any questions about wording, definitions? If not, we'll take it to vote. This will have to come back to us one more time. So you will have another chance to look at it and determine if this is where you want to go with it. So, hearing nothing, all of those that approve first time policy DDA apportionment of expenses Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, there it is. Great. Okay, let's see. The next policy is actually just something based on the OVUU board. So when OVUU was looking at their policy 4.5 from policy governance, they determined that 4.5, which is the board members' code of conduct, talks a lot about conflict of interest. And then we also realized that the Rutland Northeast board has a conflict of interest policy already, which is it in here? It might be.
BBFA.
BBFA, yes. So,
Is that the federal
yes.
purchasing?
So, no, it is not
Separate
on
from
purchasing, it's
purchasing.
separate. There is a purchasing one as well. So if you were to look at BBFA, which is the board member conflict of interest, Otter Valley determined that it did not make sense for the policy 4.5 to have all this conflict of interest language if it was going to be superseded by RNESU's conflict of interest statement anyway. So what you have in front of you is the OVUU policy for your reading pleasure, and to determine if we were to look at our policy 4.5 and our policy government statements, if we would want to do something similar, which is remove all of the conflict of interest information, and just say that we refer to BBFA in regard to that, and leave the rest of it. So if that is something that you'd like to do, we would have our first review of that tonight, or you can think about it, we can place it on our agenda for next month to really dig deeper into it. It's up to you.
I'd like to have a little more time.
Okay, so then I will put this on our agenda for January 18th, if that's okay with everybody else. Yes? Okay, great. Let's see, and then the last piece of the puzzle for tonight is to review our annual work plan. Our next meeting is not scheduled until January 18th, where we'll actually be looking at 4.6, unless, how about we do this? Are you guys okay if, looking at the work plan, if we move 4.5 up to the January 18th meeting and move 4.6 to March's meeting, and then we'll kill two birds with one stone instead of looking at two separate policies? Are you okay with that?
Yes.
So table 4.5 to March.
No.
Or move that one up to January.
Move it up to January. Okay?
Yep.
Alright. And then we'll move 4.6 to March, and then that way we're not looking at two separate policies. And it doesn't look like we'll be having any kind of, we will be talking about the superintendent evaluation, at that meeting. And that looks about it. Anything else that we need to discuss as a board tonight? No? There's a really great middle school band concert at 7 o'clock tonight at Otter Valley. So I don't know about anyone else, but if there's nothing else to be brought up in front of the board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at
6:21.
6:21. No takers? Do you want to stay?
So moved.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Robin and I think Becky. Okay, well then, you know the drill. If that you want to leave, just leave, and we'll see you next time. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.